on how not to F up your business. We've talked about the traps that almost drove us into the ground, which kind of begs to ask the question, are we business people? Are we creatives? Are we both? Does it even matter? You bet your backside it matters. So sit back, stay tuned. We're going to go for a ride.
You know, Brian, this topic is one, and I hope that I don't ramble on in this one because it's something that's been on my mind quite a bit lately, and I've just been thinking about because specifically, we've gotten to a certain place as a business. It's a really nice place to be, but I think about the fact that, this is our 22nd year in business, and I feel like now is when we finally got to this place. And what I mean by that is defining actually who we are. And,
Yeah.
you know, in some ways, it kind of mirrors somebody, in life, right? They go through high school, through college, and they're 22 years old, and they're now starting to discover who they are. Same for us in business. And I think that there's a way that you can get there a little bit sooner. I
Mhm.
think we had to go through the journey that we went through, and this is where we are now. And I think we've learned a lot, and we're a lot wiser in defining who we are, which is great because I think that the service we're going to provide is going to be, is already that much better, but it just will continue to grow from there. Um, the thing is this: when we talk about are you a business person, are you creative? The one thing I want to be clear of is yes, we're both. If you're a creative person and you serve clients in any way, shape, or form, you are in business. If you serve
Mhm.
clients in any way, shape, or form, you are in sales. And by the nature of that comment, then that means that you really have to understand numbers and understand what a budget is, understand how you can walk away with profit in a project, which, by the way, is what makes any business sustainable, is being profitable. But I think that the way we decide to go after that profit and have building a sustainable business, I think is where some of the traps fall. So I was trained in cinematography. That's when I got out of school. That's kind of where I wanted to be. But I quickly realized that certain parts of the industry weren't for me. There were things I knew even back then, there were things in my future that I wanted that didn't align with some of the trajectory of what it took to become a cinematographer, let's say, in feature films and that sort of thing. So that was decision number one. But as we look out into the creative side of sort of the video production side of business, whether it's commercial work, corporate work, there are companies that really run the gamut in terms of level of quality and polish and in terms of the type of projects they do. And, the simplest way to say it is, you might have companies that they're very cinematic in their approach. Think about shoe commercials that are on national television on the Super Bowl. Think about beverage ads and things like that, or some really high-end documentary work, that sort of thing. There is a level of polish and time and skill that went into the creation of those pieces for a very specific role. On the other ends of the spectrum, you may have companies that their sole purpose is to create what we might call very rapid turnaround projects that are meant for social media. So their shelf life is much shorter, and they're meant to make an impact on a very short span of time. And then you have things that are all the way in between those. And there's a purpose for each of them. Each of them are valid and are needed for business. They're needed for client work. Even the highest of brands can hire all of these companies, and we could all work for the same brand, but we're doing different things for them. And that ties back to sales. Customers are on a journey. Each of us are doing our work to help that company sell more. So why is this important? I think one of the things that happened to me, and I got to get very personal about this because this is kind of the purpose of our why we're doing this is to help others who might be in the same kind of jam or this goes back to the idea of the chase and this idea that you're constantly looking at what the others are doing and there's a part of you that just desires to be there. For me, it was the cinematography side and seeing some of this high-end brand work that was happening. It's like, I want to get to there. I want our company to be there. I want to be doing that work. A lot of that was for vanity. was personal ego. It was this idea of, I still have that in me and this is where I really want to be. But the reality is it actually didn't match where my soul wanted to be, per se. It wasn't a match on that end, and I was not doing the work that was needed to get to that place. And what I mean by that is in my spare time was I taking out the light kits and working on the cinematography to help hit some of those higher end stuff. And the reality is that it's not where I felt our company should be. I think we've had some discussions about where our true strengths lied, and it wasn't in that specific element. It was in a whole different side of it. Once we truly embrace that, and this is what's happened over the last 8 years of this growth cycle that we've had, is this idea of embracing our true super strength as a company and where that lies and what that means for the value we provide for customers. Great place to be. There's another flip side to it too, and this is the business side of it, which is a lot of times we look at some of these projects and we think from a business side, man, it would be great to land these $100,000 or $500,000 projects. We think of it just from a revenue side, and we think that that is going to be the thing that once we land that, that's it. We're on easy street. The reality is that whole world is full of many pitfalls that if you are not really clear about the management of dollars, you could find yourself in trouble. We won't go into all of the details because that's where I could start to ramble for hours about what is waiting for someone who lands on that side of it. But you really have to have it dialed in terms of the systems that are needed for it, the people that are needed for it, the equipment that's needed for it. And I might have said it, the systems, like having it dialed into the place where you know how much you're making out of it. Profit margins for a large project might only be 10%. Whereas on other ends of it, you might have 30, 40, 50% profit margins. You have to decide what you want your business to be, what is it that you need to make in order to be a profitable company, and then decide what end of that spectrum you want to be in. For me, and I think for you, I think we've finally gotten to this alignment of what it is that we do for our customers. And there's an amazing amount of joy that we've now found in the work. We've always had that joy, but there was always something kind of nagging at me. And that's gone. That voice is kind of gone. And now it's just this idea of the things that bring us joy in the day to day. And it's just it's so much happiness now. That idea of business versus creative is a big one. I don't think we talk about it enough. And I think sometimes we look at one end of the spectrum versus another, and we kind of put them against each other. And that is the wrong approach. We are all exceptionally valuable parts of the equation for customers. Brian, I kind of went on for a bit there, but what are your thoughts when it comes to this, when you think about this idea of business, creative, chasing, all that good stuff?
I used to love making Super 8 films in my backyard and in my basement with friends in the neighborhood. That was awesome. There's no business behind it, but that was awesome. I was creative. You hit upon it magnificently. When you are doing work for anybody else, you have to have a little bit of business acumen. More importantly, if you're an owner, or a manager, you have to have an even greater level of business acumen. The further you are up in the company, the more you have to be more business, frankly, than creative. That doesn't mean you're not a creative, but you have to choose wisely. If you work for somebody else, you have to understand what your presence on a set or a location is about. You have to know the intent of the work you are doing. And then you may have your guardrails put up or taken down accordingly. You can't put your own vanity into a project when it doesn't meet what the client needs. Your want and their needs are two very different things. If they align, oh my gosh, it's like a beautiful dance on a beautiful summer's evening on a hillside with a sumptuous meal afterwards. It's the most amazing experience. But the reality is most of it isn't. Most of it is I am going to hone my skill and use my skill for this client's needs. My wants are second to their needs. If I can turn my want into answering their needs, everything is amazing. Here's the project. It fits their needs. Can I do above and beyond that? Cool. I can. Great. I feel good. However, every hire you make needs to have an understanding. And if it's not the right fit for facility, for the materials you crank out, it's probably going to be nagging at that employee for a very long time. So not only do you have to know where you are, what you're serving, what the genre and niche you fill are, but the people you employ also have to be given the bill of goods as well, or sold the bill of goods as well to what that is, because they're going to want out if they aspire to something different. And that's okay. They should.
Yeah.
And you should welcome that from them. So the creative component is problematic because we all have our wants and we want to get better. Sometimes the want is incremental. We have to incrementally do it to the client's needs and just over deliver on that project. And sometimes, like you said, you got to take out the light case on your own and you got to go set it up in a wooded area or what have you, and try to get that look that you're looking for that no client is going to give you. But you have to decide that for yourself, and you have to realize that when you show up to a client's door, you have to listen, and then you have to fulfill that need before you fulfill your wants. And it can be tough for some. For others, it's it's actually, for others, it's more about not being lazy. Just getting out there and practicing the craft outside. And I'm going to call us all on it because we're all lazy. We have so much to do. But my favorite employees are the ones who are like, hey, can I grab the camera this weekend? Sure. Can I come in and try this on the, with After Effects this weekend, or grab the, do something on the nonlinear? Sure. Would you share? Like, you can do whatever you want. Would you share what you're doing? Yeah. Love to get feedback. That's like music to my ears. Yeah. But that requires the individual to know that when I show up to a client, it's business. When I want to experience more, I have to do the work. You say that often. You say that all the time. You say that throughout this series, and you will continue to say it. Put in the work. You have to put in the work.
Yeah, so, that's awesome. I love that. And that reminded me, I remember an employee who one day came in with a bottle of scotch, and I thought he was gonna, there's no drinking on the job here, but he was there to,
unless we're invited.
Yeah, he actually was there because he wanted to try his hand at lighting a bottle. And that particular day, there wasn't much going on, and he had finished the work that he was doing, and then the rest of his day, he structured his day that way. And it was beautiful. And then we got to watch the footage, and we got to sort of really talk of it, kind of a critique, but in a constructive way. And it was amazing. And that's what you want. So that actually is a great point, because there are three things that I think are important to remember in all of this. And one of them is to, regardless of what place you're in within the industry and the one that you've identified and like, this is where I want to be, and you're doing it, just remember that even within those confines, you can continue to do great work, and you should be continuing to be better at what you're doing. So for me, maybe my chase is no longer sort of that highest end of cinematography, but you better believe that I am bringing some cinematography chops to every job that I do at every level. And I am looking now, and every time now, with every shot, what are those little details? What are those places where I can keep improving? At every stage, just keep doing better work for your clients. That's number one. The other one is, if you're someone where that thing is nagging at you, where you keep looking at that work and say, I want to go to there, then, as Brian said, you got to put in the work. But it's more than that. It's also your associations. So start to do the work, really start to take that spare time that you have to, you got to do work for the business, but then take the spare time to really play with that lighting, create some scenes, do some Some typical scenarios that you might find in some of these higher end pieces, um, call out to others in the industry. There are many, and well, the one thing that's true about this industry is we all want to help each other, and we all want to be on other people's shoots because we want to learn from them and we want to keep practicing our craft. And what you end up finding is that there are lots of people who will either give their time, equipment, expertise, all of that to help you create that spec spot, that, fake commercial, that scene that you always wanted to film and shoot and all that kind of stuff. But you got to put in that time. Stop. Don't be complacent. You got to do it to get that work to then get there. A lot of companies will keep doing specific types of projects, and sometimes they do it at a loss because their company is founded on that chase of wanting to be in this level. And so every job they do is to get them inched closer and closer and closer every single time. That's their trajectory, and they're built for that. You have to understand, if that's what you want, then you got to build your system around that. And it's okay to do other things, but remember, at the end of the day, you got to keep practicing towards that craft. The other big one is, this is a tough one for me because I think I had a little bit of this early on, and it hit me while you were talking. Brian mentioned having people who were doing shooting, who are editing, who are doing all these things, be super cautious about hero complex and being the one who has to take the credit for something that was filmed beautifully or an amazing edit that happened. We accomplish so much more when we don't care who gets the credit for it. And so that idea of the hero complex, I think, plays a big part in it. I think that's one of the things that's been missing in the things that I've been thinking about with this topic. Hero complex is, I think, the biggest trap of all of this. So as you're chasing that, understand that there are those who are just better at a certain thing at the time than you are, but they're there to teach you. If that ego is in check, and you're willing to put the time in to then be with them and learn from them, and then continue to grow your craft. I think that's a huge part of this too.
You also made a comment, but I know it's not, I don't believe it's fully what you meant. So I just want to come back to it. You
Please.
talked about you had always aspired to the cinematography, to, you still aspire to it, but
Yeah.
the path you're taking is different. And the path is, I would love my work to look like that, regardless of what I work on, but I'm taking the next step. The goal isn't to do feature films. The goal is just for me to get that kind of quality into my work. I'm taking the next step. And knowing what your work is doesn't negate you from constantly aspiring to get that next chunk toward the ultimate in your mind. We have always have robust discussions about film. So
Yeah.
the cinematography always creeps in. And regardless,
Yeah.
you're not going to be satisfied until you're doing epic quality work. However, you also know that that's not the clients we serve. So if any of it creeps in, you're going to be excited and move to the next step and keep moving to the next step and keep moving to the next step. So I just want to caution that it's not a limiting mindset. If anything, it's a
not.
very structured approach forward. So
Correct.
that's all.
Yeah, and I think thank you for bringing that up. That's that is exactly how it should have come across, and it didn't. But that's
It's
that
all good,
idea
man.
of
I know you.
continuing to, you know me, and it's that idea of continuing to. So the beauty of this is that we've defined who we are, and we've defined the pockets that we live well in. But it doesn't mean that we're not doing, specific types of projects that call on certain skill sets. And even in the ones that don't, there is a level of sharpening the craft every time. And there's so much love and joy in that. I love that. And
Yeah.
you know, hey, let's make our lighting better for this. This
Hmm.
composition is missing something. You could either just film it or you could say, no, we could do better than this.
Hmm.
And you're constantly striving. And it's the journey, like that joy of the journey of just getting better at your craft. There's a freedom to that. And that's where, for me, that's what just, it makes me just get excited to film.
Yeah.
That actually is the joy to me, is that. That's the joy. But I think there's so much more that we could say here, but I think that this gives a lot to for folks to think about it. Just remember that if you're looking to level up, um, do so for the right reasons, number one, but know yourself and understand where the places are that you need to fill in. What are the places where you need to shore up your skill set? Where are the places where you have to build a little more business acumen to really understand what it takes to make that sustainable for yourself? And then do the work. Keep building yourself. And if you're not on that path, whatever path you're on in the industry, just keep getting better at the work that you do. And remember that we're all here to serve customers. At the end of the day, we're also serving ourselves, you know? So let's just do better. Let's just keep leveling up both as people, as business people, and in our craft. Um, and with that, let us know if there were some things that maybe hit a little too close to home for you. For me, it was the hero complex. But let us know in the comments below, and we will see you on the next one. So long.
Stay safe, stay healthy.